Hi, I'm Michael, and welcome to The Pet's Journey. Today, we're going to be talking about untangling the leash training. Where do we begin? Is it a rope? Is it a string? Is it a leather rope or, strap? Who knows what it is? There's so many different things people use for leashes these days, but let's find out what the right leash is to use. Sitting here with Travis Brorsen today, we're going to be breaking it down. Thank you for joining. Hi, everybody. Welcome to All Things Dogs. I'm Michael, your host today with Travis Brorsen, and we are here talking about untangling your leash. Back in the days, people used ropes, they used strings, they used all different apparatuses to hold down their dog or walk their dog. But today, you walk in a pet store, and there's so much available to us that we don't know where to start or where do we begin. And so I have Travis here, and Travis is a trainer, and he's also a celebrity trainer. He's been on my Big Fat Pet Makeover with Animal Planet, and he's doing a couple more things with Discovery right now. And you see him scattered all over the shows on TV. I love it. I know his world, and I just enjoy his world so much, and I'm so happy he's doing it. He's such the perfect candidate to do it. He's got the right personality. So with that, Travis, I'd love for you to say hi to the room.
Yeah, absolutely. Hello, everybody. So glad you guys are here. It's going to be a lot of fun today. I've always loved sharing stories, learning from other people, owners and dog trainers. And of course, what a great talent Michael is and hosting these rooms. And I'm afraid before long, he's going to be taking over our jobs. He's getting so good at all this. So Michael, thanks for doing this today.
Travis, leashes, where do we begin? I mean, I was jokingly saying that we started with ropes, we started with twine, but that really is where we started. And there's so many options. When somebody brings home a pet, or even before they bring home a pet, where do they begin to start understanding what is the right leash for them?
Sure. Well, and it does get confusing, Michael. You read so many things on the internet, you watch so many YouTube videos, and then you go to the pet store, right? You walk in and you tell the salesperson, or maybe they have a dog trainer on staff, and you talk to them about, hey, you tell them exactly what you said, right? And then they walk you down the aisle, and then you have different colors, you have different styles, you have clips, you have slip leads, you have different types of, the collars, from the prongs to the pinch to the e-collars to the just really pretty collars, right? And I think at the end of the day, what you need to ask yourself, number one, is where are you in your journey, right? Did I just get a puppy? Is it 8 weeks old? Is it 10 weeks old? Has it ever worn a collar, or has it ever been on a leash before, right? But at the end of the day, when dogs are learning to use a leash and or a collar, it's all very simple, and the steps are the same, right? It's less about the actual leash or collar, and it is about what you're trying to get your dog to do, and training your dog to recreate what happens when we are on a leash, right? And associating what is going to happen with the leash or the collar. And those associations should never be negative, right? They should always be positive associations. So really, when you make it really, really simple, and that's one of the things I want to start to focus on, is how do we make all the answers to these questions and people that are listening, how do we make everything very, very simple? Because if it's not simple, then we're probably doing it incorrectly. So I think that's where you start, is what is it exactly we want our dog to be doing? Where are we going to be taking them? And how do we want them to act when we're there? And if you start there, the leash really doesn't matter, as long as it's not causing our dog any pain or giving them negative associations with the act.
I love the fact that you're saying, okay, what do we want our dog to do? Where are we going? Are we going hiking? Are we going running? Are we going to the beach? What are we doing with our dog? And that might help you with your leash select. When we have a puppy, I want to get back, like you said, let's keep it really basic for people. Let's keep it really simple so that we're walking into this, because I have a friend that just got a puppy, and they're asking me all these questions like, well, what collar, what leash, what do I do? And I'm like, slow down. That's number one, slow down, baby steps. We always talk about baby steps. So we got a puppy, and before we get the puppy home, we want to have certain tools at home. And one of them I would think is a leash, and one's a collar and all that. Would you start off with just a simple leash before you have all these questions answered, like what you're going to do with your dog? Because maybe if it's at a puppy stage, you don't know what you're going to do with your dog yet, but you still have to take him for a walk. Does that dictate anything to you?
Well, I think when you first get the dog, we always recommend a very simple leash with a clip, a collar, and that's it. right? Because we never want to use the leash and the collar to physically manipulate our dog, right? So even though we put a leash on our dog and we're going to take it somewhere, if it's a puppy and you've never practiced the walking, right? If you haven't even walked around your couch or through your kitchen on a leash, the last thing you want to do is head out to a park and try to get your dog to walk politely on a leash, because they're in Disneyland, right? And I mean, trying to get a kid to be calm at Disneyland or a theme park is very difficult until they get a little older. So you could get the standard leash and collar, because your whole goal when you first get that dog is to let the dog know these are good things, right? These are great things. We want to associate them with food, praise, treats, all of those things. Not necessarily, if I put this leash on you, now I'm going to pull you around and I'm going to yank on you and I'm going to do all these things. Those are the biggest mistakes that we can make. And that's why it's not so much about the leash. It's more about the association and what happens when the leash and or collar are being used, if that makes sense.
What's our baby steps of getting our dog used to it?
Sure. Very, very, very simple. If you have a new puppy, one of the quickest things to do is, instead of feeding them in a bowl, is you take their kibble and you have a leash. So let's say I have a little bit of kibble in my left hand and I have the leash in my right hand, right? And I lean down towards my dog. The dog sees the leash and the dog just kind of, looks at the leash, looks at you. Maybe the dog licks the leash, and boom, I pay him with some kibble. Right there, I'm saying, when you see this leash, look how great it is, right? And if my dog isn't running away or getting scared, then I could advance to the next step. The next step would be, okay, now can I take the leash and can I clip it on their collar, give them a little bite of food, and then clip it off of their collar, right? That would be step 2. If your dog is totally cool with that, then we could clip it on, give a little bite of food, and then maybe we play with the dog with a toy and it just drags the leash around, right? Maybe we just do that for 30 seconds to a minute and we clip the leash off again. And those are the beginning steps of acclimating your dog to a new device, a new tool, giving them the positive reinforcement, the positive association, so that long-term down the road, you get that out. And we've seen this before. I've seen it with clients where somebody gets out the leash and one of two things happen. Either the dog goes nuts, right, because it's so excited about what's going to happen, or you get out the leash and the dog looks at the owner and is like, no way, you're not putting that on me. And the reason is because they skipped all of these steps. And the only thing the dog thinks of when they see the collar is that they're going to be yanked or pulled around, or there's going to be some negative association with it. So beginning steps are those things. We show the leash, give a treat, clip the leash, give a treat, clip the leash, leave it on, play with toys, maybe do, some luring with the food to where the leash just becomes a part of their body, right? Where it's just part of the way it is. And that's the best place to start.
And that's pretty basic. I love that. Everybody follows that. That should really help them set their dog up to win. But let's say this, Travis, what if that doesn't work? What is the common mistake people are doing during this process that you find that you can correct and say, okay, let's go back. Let's see where you are. Let's see what's working, what's not working. How do you correct something that's not working? What if the pet parent thinks they're doing everything correctly?
Sure. So one of the biggest mistakes that we see is that pet parents, and I do this myself with my own dogs, right? So, I mean, I'm speaking from experience, is that we want the process to go faster than it really should. Meaning, my expectation is, I got a dog, in the next week, I should be able to take it for a walk around the block, right? Or I should be able to take it here on a leash and it should be behaving itself. So realistic expectations, I know we talk about this all the time, but most owners, like, you talk them through this process and then you leave their house because you did a private session. 3 days go by, they're trying to walk their dog around the block. Well, there's nothing wrong with taking your dog for a walk, but if your expectations are your dog to be perfect on the leash, not try to bite the leash, not try to chew on the leash, all of those things are expectations that are unrealistic because our dog hasn't had the time to be acclimated to it. So we talk about different levels, right? And a lot of people can relate to grades, like pre-K, kindergarten, first grade, second grade. So if you broke it down into grades, the simple acclimation of the leash is like pre-K, right? Having the leash on your dog, dragging it around is like kindergarten, right? Being able to hold the leash and your dog ignore the leash while you are holding their focus with a positive reward or toy, that could be like first or second grade, right? Being able to take 3, 4, 5 steps, holding the leash with no tension, keeping your dog focused on something positive. That's really the key, Michael, is that if we're not providing a focal point that is more exciting or more interesting than the dangly leash that sometimes looks like a toy, if we aren't providing them with that, then we're not setting them up for success. And so what happens is most owners try to rush that process because they think, one, well, I just don't have time, right? Or two, I have a really smart dog, right? I have a German Shepherd. He should be able to figure it out. But we have to remember we're dealing with puppies, just like children, and it takes time. Nobody enters their child into pre-kindergarten and expects them to graduate high school within the first year. But we get a puppy, and in 3 months, we're wondering why that puppy isn't heeling on the leash, going between our legs, rolling over and playing dead all on the same day. And it's just that it just takes time.
So I'm going to jump to Blue really quick. Your little boy. Is it similar to like training or, training? Is it the word? Yeah, I guess training is the word. Okay. Training your little boy to wear a t-shirt. It's like getting the dog to wear the collar and leash without them really realizing it's on there. Because I think, and I'm just assuming like with Blue, the moment you put a shirt on him the very first time, he's ready to rip it off because he's like, what the hell is this?
Oh, 100%. I mean, and for anybody out there that's in our room, if you have kids or nieces or nephews, there's a stage where they just want to be naked, right? I mean, they're not embarrassed. They don't care. It feels good to be naked. And the first time you try to, put that diaper on them or put underwear on them or put a shirt on them, it's all they could do to take it off. Well, a dog is the same way, right? A dog's not born with a leash on or a collar on. So you get that dog at 8 weeks old and you try to put a collar on it, it's all it can do to scratch it off. Oh, it's irritating. It's itchy. Oh, get it off there. You put that leash on it. Oh, get me away from that thing. That thing's scary and crazy, right? So, but yeah, you can do the same thing with a child. Hey, okay, let's put this shirt on and you get a Skittle or you get an M&M, right? And of course, then they want to take it off. Okay, take it off. If you want another M&M or Skittle, we got to put that shirt back on, right? And you can, so yes, you can do it the same way. I hopefully my wife isn't listening from the other room because she says we should not train our son like we train dogs. But there's a lot of similarities. You're right, Michael.
I was laughing more about the Skittles, like she would be on you for giving him Skittles.
Well, more the M&Ms or a little cracker treat. He's 4 now, so he can do that kind of stuff. But it was like that with potty training. We thought, when I know that's not this room today, but we get a dog to go outside, they go potty, we give him a little treat. It was the same with our son, right? Okay, let's go over here, let's go potty. And we have a little jar of M&Ms up on the counter or Skittles, and he would go, and then he got rewarded, right? Positive reinforcement. That's what we really, really instill in all of our clients.
So you really, I love that fact that you went through pre-K to first, second grade, kind of on to the focal point of like the leash, and everybody just really learning how to use that with baby steps. And I think that's so important that people just really remember to take those baby steps, because those baby steps are really what makes the difference. Because when, like you were talking about, when you set up those expectations, and I hear this all the time in the rooms where people have such high expectations for their dogs. And so really they're not setting their dog up to lose, they're setting themselves up to lose. And when they do lose, they get frustrated. And then they're like, what's wrong with the dog? And it's really has nothing to do with the dog. It has everything to do with the baby steps, right, Travis?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, if we can't help the owners, we're going to have a really hard time helping the dog, right? Because we don't live there, right? They're the ones that are setting those rules and boundaries. They're the ones that have to follow through or don't follow through. They're the ones building that relationship with their dog. So it's really providing the owner with those tools and the roadmap, right? And then the owner can either stay on that roadmap or they can go off road, right? It doesn't matter. But as a trainer, our job is to provide the information and the tools for the owner and be an accountability partner for them, be their biggest cheerleader, and really provide them with the answers they need to be successful. Nobody's ever perfect. Dogs aren't perfect, which is what makes them so great.
So when I ask these questions to you, to many people in the rooms, one of the biggest responses I always get is like, every dog is its own person, its own personality, and it's situational to each dog. How does one, when they're picking out a dog, figure out if this dog is going to be right for them?
Well, I think one of the things that happens a lot of times is people decide they want a dog, and they want one right then, right? That happens a lot. If you really map it out, the best way to do it is what does my family like to do, right? What's my lifestyle, right? Do we travel a lot? Are we home a lot? Are we around other families with dogs? Do we go on a lot of hikes? Are we outdoor people, right? Or are we hermits? Do we like to stay inside? And so finding breeds, and obviously if you're rescuing, it's really difficult, and that's okay, right? You just know what you're getting into. But typically a dog's personality really doesn't come out until like 7 to 14 days of having it in your new home. I can't tell you how many times I've had clients after 3 days of having the dog, they're like, oh my gosh, this dog's perfect. It just lays around. It sleeps all the time. This is so great. I'm like, just give it a few more days, right? Because it just takes some acclimation time for a dog to be in a new environment and for their personality to really come out, right? So you could break down, well, different breeds and what they're bred to do. And there's nothing wrong with that. But at the end of the day, I've had plenty of labs that don't want to retrieve. I've had plenty of golden retrievers that don't like to get in water, right? So it shouldn't just be very cut and dry, because you're right, all dogs are different. But at the end of the day, I've never met a dog that didn't like companionship. I've never met a dog that didn't like affection, that didn't like to be loved, that didn't like to spend time with their owner, right? And that's where I think seeking out help, if you need that help, somebody can help you navigate that journey.
Well, you mentioned the acclimation point, and that comes up a lot in our rooms. And a lot of people, I don't think, are familiar with that when they get a puppy or they bring home a dog from a foster, is that it takes, they say, and I'm learning here, it takes 3 to plus months for a dog to really get acclimated into their space. So how does training work around them getting acclimated? How do you work in training to work with that process?
Sure. Well, one of the things that we encourage our owners to do, dogs are motivated by different things, right? But at the end of the day, every dog has to eat. Every dog has to drink water. Every dog needs shelter. And so whenever you do that type of thing, you go, okay, I know my dog needs food. My dog likes food. My dog loves food, right? So we like to use the food as the training. And training isn't just sit down, stay, come when called. Training is, hey, whenever we walk past the coffee table and there's food on it, stay with me, right? Or whenever we go into the room where there's toys all over the place, these are your toys. And how do we introduce them to those types of environments and help guide them consistently so that they eventually repeat that on their own without the guidance, right? That's kind of the simple way to describe it. So I encourage owners, instead of feeding in a bowl at a certain mealtime, take that food and over the course of 30, 40 minutes, navigate your house, walk around, have your dog follow you. As long as that food's important to them, they'll go with you, right? If a dog learns to follow you and be with you, and then when it does venture off, it hears its name, it comes back to you, it gets a little bit of food, you're starting to introduce your dog, hey, this is how we want to do it, right? This is the routine. These are the habits that I want you to be in. And then when you're not able to do that for your puppy, we have to put them somewhere where they will be safe and where they will not make mistakes. One of the biggest things that we see, people bring dogs home or they rescue them, they give them all this space, they let them have all this, freedom, and the dog messes up constantly. Well, there's a reason for that. It's not because the dog is mad at you, the dog doesn't hate you, the dog's not holding a grudge. It doesn't know any better. And that's why those first, few weeks to couple months are so, so important.
Well, and that makes so much sense too, because how many pet parents will bring home a puppy and they're like, okay, it's like have the run of the house. And then all of a sudden the dog will do something and the pet parent will get so upset going, well, he peed in the house or he pooped in the house. And yet the dog still doesn't even know it's the house yet. Right.
Oh, totally. I had a call with the client yesterday, and she was kind of going through everything, and she said, we recently got a divorce. I have 2 children. She was like, I'm convinced that my dog is so mad because I took it out to go pee. It's potty trained. I took it out to go pee in the backyard. It didn't go. Next thing I know, it came in the house, ran upstairs, got on my bed, peed, and then came back downstairs. And she goes, I just know. I feel so bad. He's so mad at me. So he went up and peed on my bed. Right. And I was like, well, talk to me about some of the changes that have happened with your schedule and your routine. And everything had been flipped upside down. Right. And I was like, so it's important for you to know a dog's not going to do something out of spite. But we are so related and so familiar with human responses and human reactions that we put that human response and reaction on the dog because we want there to be an answer. And really, it's more simple than that, right? Your dog went outside. You didn't go with them. So your dog didn't go out there and pee because it wanted to be with you. It didn't pee. So when you let it back in, it needed to go pee. So instead of peeing in front of you, because the dog probably related peeing in front of you makes you mad, the dog went somewhere where you didn't see them because it had to pee, and it peed and then came back downstairs, right? So it's just so much more simple than that. And I think helping people understand that, she was like, oh, yeah, I guess you're probably right. And so just helping them unpack that, it can be really, really, really simple.
Yet some people make it so difficult.
Well, yeah. I mean, don't we do that in life, right?
Yes.
I mean, we're always looking for answers. We're always trying to explain things. And we are most familiar with human emotions and human responses. Well, dogs aren't human, right? They're animals. And so they're just not going to do things out of spite the same way a human would. And it doesn't mean they don't have emotions. Doesn't mean they don't love. Doesn't mean they don't get upset or sad at times. But it's just not the same as the human. Well,
I think that's so I'm talking about is like, just really getting to know the pet, really understanding the new environment for the pet and really setting them up to win by just not taking things so personally because, pet parenthood, let's call it. A lot of people get very sensitive and they take actions of the dog against them and it really has nothing to do with them.
Totally. And I think one of the things we deal with the most are humans and their emotions and their guilt, right? So I'll ask a pet parent, okay, you got a new puppy, you played with it, you took it out to pee, it's tired, now it's time to go in its crate or small confined space. Why don't you want to put it there? Well, I've only had it for 24 hours. I feel so bad because when I put it in there, it's whining and it's crying and I feel like I'm going to cause mental and emotional damage. Right. So I'll say, all right, well, do you have children, your friends? Yeah. And we'll just we'll talk about, your baby crying in the crib. It has a clean diaper. Your baby's tired. It's in the crib. There's no way it can be hurt. And you have to sit in the living room or wherever you are hearing it cry. You have two options. You can go get it out, right? Because your guilt overtook you, or somebody told you it's okay to let him cry. And you sit there with your guilt and your emotions and you get over it. And in 2 or 3 nights, now your baby is just going to sleep because the baby goes, okay, well, crying's not going to work and I'm tired and I have a clean diaper. It's all good. It's the same with the puppy. But for some reason, because it's an animal, there's so many of these pet parents who just can't understand that concept.
Yeah, and it's certain too, because like I was talking about my friend earlier who just got a puppy and he was asking me, what do I do? How do I do it? And I'm age, a pin, not bigger than him, but big enough for him to just turn around. And then if he cries at night, don't go to him. And I said exactly what you just said. I said, don't go to him because if you go to them, he'll know that that's a behavior that you're reinforcing and being a good behavior because he gets what he wants. He gets you to come get him. And he's like, oh, I can't sit there and listen to him cry. I have to do it. And I'm like, no, but so how did that really big, a difficult one for people, Travis?
Yeah, well, it is until they bite earplugs. You have a little checklist, right? Your checklist is my dog tired? If the answer is yes, that's good. Has my dog had an opportunity to go to the bathroom? Yes, great. Has it been 30 minutes to an hour and a half that my dog hasn't had any food or water, right? The reason that's important is because if you give your dog food or water and put them right in the crate, there is a chance that they could have to go to the bathroom soon. That could be a reason for crying. But if you can say, yeah, my dog hasn't had anything to eat or drink for half an hour up to an hour and a half, and they had an opportunity to go potty. Better yet, they actually do potty before you put them in there. They're going to be okay. So we will tell people that it's best to take that crate and that puppy and put it in a very low traffic area, turn the lights off, cover the crate, with an old sheet, something that's breathable, but also helps take out the light. People all the time want to leave windows open, or I've had clients in New York that, live on the 87th floor and they'll put the crate right up against the window and go, I want my dog to see, see out there. And I'm like, well, that's fine if you do that, but light is energy, right? Sound is energy. All these things are energy, which don't allow your dog to ever really decompress, be calm, stay calm, and get that rest and sleep that they need as puppies. So those are a couple other things that can be very helpful.
You talked about giving them water at night. and them having to go back out to pee. Let's talk about leash training. With leash training, let's say you have a puppy and they do go to the bathroom quite often. Should you be trying to put the leash on them every single time that you take them out as a puppy? Is that a good way for them to get used to the leash, or is it just too overwhelming for the situation for them just going out to pee?
Well, the answer that nobody really wants to hear is it's all situational, right? It really kind of depends on family to family, because if I'm at somebody's house and the adult is asking this, and the adult has a treat in one hand, the leash in the other hand, they clip the leash on, they wave the treat in front of the puppy's nose and lure them outside, and the puppy's looking at the treat the whole time. Finally get them to go potty. They deliver the treat as the reward, and they walk them back in on the leash. That's great, right? If they put the leash on the dog and they have the treat, and even if they have the treat, the dog starts biting and chewing on the leash, right there I know I'm moving too fast, right? I was not able to hold the dog's focus off of the leash and on the treat, so the dog's not ready for this, right? Or another situation, I might tell the owner that yes, you could do that. I think this puppy is ready. And then they hand it to their 12-year-old son or daughter, and they don't do anything that we say, and they're dragging the dog out there on the leash. So right, you can see how that could be misconstrued, where they go, well, you said it was okay, and I'm like, well, I said it was okay for you, right? Not for the 12-year-old that just is having a hard time being consistent with it. So all that to say, it really depends on the situation and who's the one doing it.
So there's so much to untangle with the leash. It's so simple, but yet it's so complicated for some people just to really get. I remember when I had my first puppy living out on my own, and the first thing I did was enroll him into a training course and all that. But the leash was one of the most difficult thing for me to get a hold of with my dog. And so it's really, wonderful to have you here and just kind of break this down, because these baby steps are really important so that you are not just getting your dog used to the leash in the very beginning of their life and willing and excited to go for a walk on a leash, but it's also setting them up to win for the future, because the way they behave today is the way they're going to behave tomorrow if they don't have the right training. So why not start off on the right foot? Now I want to jump into another side of Travis. Travis, let's talk about you for a second. I've been waiting for this moment. I'm excited that you're here. You were talking about the show that you're working on and that they're casting some trainers and their dogs. Let's break into that a little bit. Do you feel like talking about that?
Yeah, let's do it.
So talk about the show that you're working on right now. What are you doing?
The show we're doing now is called Puppy Bowl Presents the Dog Games, right? So this show, it's the pilot we shot last December, and it aired on Super Bowl Sunday. So Puppy Bowl Presents, it's not Puppy Bowl. So a lot of people watch the Puppy Bowl and they're like, we didn't see you. I'm like, but that's not the same show. Puppy Bowl Presents the Dog Games. What they do is and so the pilot is airing currently on Discovery Plus. So if anybody has Discovery Plus, you can go check it out. You just search the Dog Games and it'll pop up. So in the first episode, I was one of the expert judges. And then we had a lifestyle judge who was a comedian. And then the comedian and actor Kim Whitley is the actual host of the show. In the first episode, 4 dog trainers. And actually in the first episode, they were really more just like really involved pet parents. The next 4 episodes will actually be, dog trainers who have been working with other people's dogs, their own dogs. But that first pilot episode, the 4 trainers came on and they competed through a series of challenges. So the first round they called it horse for dogs. So if you played horse in basketball or pig, the first dog trainer would get up with their dog. We would give them a trick or a skill to do, right? So maybe it was a weave through the legs, right? So the first contestant would get up there, they would have their dog weave through their legs. If they completed it, great, they passed, and the next one would come up and do it. The first dog and owner pair that didn't complete it would receive a letter, right? So H. The first one to HORSE would be eliminated in the first round. Round was our agility course, right? When I say that, and if you watch the show, you'll know what I mean. We're not judging the same way you might see an agility course on TV, even though a lot of the elements are very similar. We had a giant tunnel where we hung like bacon on these strings that would hang down. It was full of tennis balls, other toys, and for that certain element, the owner had to put their dog in a sit stay at one end of the tunnel. They had to go through the tunnel, and then call their dog through, hoping that their dog wouldn't be distracted by all the elements. So they could use commands like leave it or focus or whatever worked for them. And the course was timed, and then we judged each of them on those different elements. This next round, they have a new judge, another pet expert coming in. That is a fantastic trainer, does all kinds of tricks, travels the country in her RV, just a superb trainer. And so she's going to bring a little different flair to it because her background really is in all these tricks and training and those types of things. And then there'll be a celebrity third judge that will be part of it. The last round is what they call the showstopper. And this is almost like you'd see like Dancing with Dogs, but it's really more about the tricks with the dog. So they'll put together a little routine to music, incorporating the best tricks that their dog can do as the showstopper. And then whichever dog comes out on top, this last season won $5,000 that they could donate to the animal charity of their choice, and then crowned the dog games champion for that season. So that's what we're currently working on. I would love to answer any questions if anybody has any about those, or I'm sure you have a couple questions, so hit me with them.
So like with people in the room, if they have a dog and they want to get on the show and they let's say they shoot you a DM, what if they have butterflies? You did it. You got on a show. That's where you started, right?
Yeah. Most of these people in the room probably weren't born when I was on that show. It was 2008, or maybe they were in elementary school. But yeah, I was on The Greatest American Dog, which was on CBS with my boxer Presley before I was a dog trainer. That one was a little different. They took 12 owners and their dogs, put them in a house in Agora Hills, California. It was a 10-week competition. We lived there. We slept there 24 hours a day. We were in this house. Again, like I said, I was not a trainer then. I had made all the mistakes that we see owners making all the time. I had put my dog in a crate when he was in trouble. I used them all. If there was a piece of equipment that was going to help me, I tried it. I only really called my dog when he was in trouble. So he actually thought his name was like a cuss word or a bad word. And I really learned all of those mistakes when I was on this show. But I'm such a competitor. I was like, I've got to do well. And anyway, we ended up winning that show, which was just a shock to everybody. Vegas actually gave us 1 in 100 odds to win. So I doubt anybody bet on us to win. I guess I wish I'd have known that, and maybe I'd have put some money on myself. But that was a great experience for me. But really, what it did is my dog Presley. For anybody out there that knows boxers, I mean, he was a clown trapped in a dog suit, and the only way I could keep his focus and get his attention was if I made everything fun, if I turned it into a game, and I kept everything really, really short. Right, I had to, because attention span, his ADHD, was at the top of his game, and so they had one challenge where they had a 9,000. And we talked about this before, Mike. You actually know the elephant Susie, where they had an elephant at the end of a driveway. We had to put our dogs in a sit stay in a circle. It was about a 5-foot radius circle, and they put a banana in the circle. Now, if the elephant could come down this driveway charging at your dog, if your dog stayed in the sit stay while the elephant walked up, reached in the circle, grabbed the banana and ate it, you would pass the challenge. So these are like challenges you would really never see or witness or ever go through at all in your life, ever. But going through that process, it just changed our relationship, right? I realized I made so many mistakes, but it's never too late. And if I could go out there and help other owners bridge that gap and get to the right answers, give them the education they need sooner rather than later, anybody can have that kind of relationship with their dog. So that's kind of what brought us full circle, and that's what kicked us off, as far as working with Animal Planet, hosting my Big Fat Pet Makeover, and now being the judge on the dog games.
That's why I'm asking these questions. Like, I've called my YouTube channel The Pet's Journey, and I always like to find out what's your journey. And I'm bringing this up to everyone in our room so that you can hear the journey of somebody who had a pet, was in an apartment here in LA, and he wasn't a trainer. And then now today you're a trainer. So this was your part of your journey. That connection with your boxer at that point, going through that show, was part of your journey to be where you are today, right?
Oh, totally. One story. So for anybody familiar with LA, we lived on between Sunset Boulevard and Hollywood Boulevard on a little street called Stanley. And at the end of the street called Stanley, there was the Samuel French bookstore. So if anybody out there knows about acting or actors, Michael, you probably know that.
I know it. Yeah.
It's not there anymore, I don't think. I think they turned it into a bar.
Yes. Yeah.
So like the Iron Horse. So Samuel French, that was at the end of my street, right? And so there was one day that I was at home. I was just sitting on the couch, and I got a phone call. And they said, "This is Samuel French." And I was like, "Oh, wow, okay. Hey." And they said, "Do you have a boxer?" And I was like, "Yeah, I have a boxer." And they go, "Okay, well, he's down here in the store." I said, "What?" And they go, "Yeah, do you want to come get him?" And I walked to the end of the street, around the corner, into the Samuel French bookstore, and there was my dog, right? So this is the kind of stuff that I went through before I was a trainer. Like every dog owner out there has probably dealt with something like this. But, I look back and I go, he could have ran into Sunset Boulevard and got hit by a car. He could have completely ran off. Somebody could have found him and taken him. Of course, if they knew him well enough, they probably wouldn't have taken him because he was such a mess. I'm glad they didn't. But, those things like that happened to me too, right?
So you say he was such a mess they wouldn't take him. Was he such a mess because you were a mess?
Oh, 100%. Yeah. It was not his fault. I was the biggest mess out there. Are you kidding? I mean, I think if a dog trainer had seen me at the time and tried to help me, they'd probably been like, "Oh man, you're a lost cause. I just don't know if I can help you." So yeah, definitely. I had no idea what I was doing.
So let's sum this up. So you lived in Hollywood. I know exactly where you live, right around the corner from Samuel French. I've been in that store so many times myself. You're not from LA, are you?
Oh no, I'm from Middle America,
right?
Oklahoma, small town, Perry, Oklahoma. Yep. So
it sounds like the making of somebody that moved out of their state that came to California that wanted to be an actor. Is that the situation here?
Oh, that was it. I mean, hey, I'll admit. I mean, trying to be an actor that's a tough life. I went to acting school for 4 years. It wasn't till after 4 years at the Joanne Baron D.W. Brown studio in Santa Monica, I finally got my first job. My first job was on a TV show called Jag, which was most people on here probably haven't even heard of it. And I had a great time being an actor for the next 4 years after that. I was lucky enough to do that without having to have a second job, but it was still a grind. I mean, it was just still a grind. And I thought, man, I just don't know if this is something I want to do forever. But I will tell you, and Michael, we talk about this all the time. For any of you out there that are dog trainers, like, just keep doing what you love, right? And if you love working with the dogs, keep doing it. If you love helping the people, keep doing it. Because if you're doing what you love, your life will take you where you're supposed to be. And I think you're a great person, Michael, to attest to this, because who would have known 2 years ago that you would have created a YouTube show, off of this app, hosting, what are you hosting? Like 20, 30 rooms a week? I mean, it's crazy, right? And you're doing what you love. You're great at it. And look at all the opportunities that it's provided, and that's what I think people need to know is just do what you love and it'll take you where you're supposed to be.
Yeah, I've kind of followed that whole path my whole life. I was blessed with a mom that just saw that I was an artist when I was a kid and really worked with me and gave me the tools and understanding and the freedom, the big word freedom, to be who I am. And I've enjoyed it and I followed my passion. And that's why I love bringing this up. And I like talking about the journey. And that's why I named it The Journey, because I've had a journey. We've all had journeys. Everybody in our room today, we've all had journeys. Sometimes they're high, sometimes they're low, but they take us to where we go. And if we follow and we stay focused on our passion, like Travis is saying, you will find yourself in such a beautiful space. And if you're not in that space right now, what you want to do is you want to ask yourself, what's going on? What don't I like? What do I want instead? And start focusing on what you want instead of what's not working. Because if you focus on what doesn't work, you're actually going to attract more of that into your life. If you focus on what you want instead and really stay focused on and how it looks and how it feels and how it tastes and how it looks completely 100% in front of you, you're going to actually attract that. And so with that, Travis, you being an actor, moving probably from the middle America to LA, like so many people, they say that there's 10,000 people a month that move here and there's 10,000 people a month that actually move out of here because they came to be actors and they didn't make it. So here you are, Samuel French, you have this boxer. What possessed you to get a boxer? Was it just one of those things like, oh, everybody's got a dog in LA, I'm going to get a dog? Or had you always wanted a boxer?
No, well, it's kind of crazy. No, my sister, who was back in Oklahoma, they had rescued a male boxer that was running out in the country, and she had brought it home. She has kids. I don't know why she didn't think that this would happen. She called the local ASPCA, 3 days later it took them to come get this dog, which she obviously let her female and this male hang out together as if she didn't know this other dog was neutered. The ASPCA comes to get the male dog. Months later, here we are with a pregnant boxer, and so she has all these puppies that she doesn't know what to do with. And I was like, I would love to have one. I'll take one, right? And that's how it all came about. I obviously was one of those people that's like, well, there's a dog. I'll just go get it. No preparation, no planning, no idea what I was doing. And there I was, right? And that's kind of how it all got started.
So there you were, Hollywood, hands up in the air, a little boxer. And then all of a sudden this dog is doing all these crazy things. And you were like, what is going on here? And then you decide, did you get cast in this show or did you decide you'd audition for the show?
Yeah, well, no, I definitely thought I have no business auditioning for a show. So it was in 2008 when there was the writer's strike. And I lived right below Runyon Canyon. So I had taken my boxer, he was 14 months old at the time, up to Runyon Canyon, which is an off leash for anybody that's been there. My dog has no business off leash. Here we are talking about leashes. I was not using one when I should have been. And we're coming down Runyon Canyon. He runs off ahead. I don't know what he was doing. And this lady comes running around the corner and she's like, is that your dog? And I was like, uh-oh. Did he do something? Like, did he bite somebody? Like, you know what I mean? What did he do? I don't know if I want to claim it.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, and I was like, maybe this is my opportunity to get away. I don't know. About that time, he came back up and he was licking my hand, and I was like, this one? You know, and she was like, yeah, oh, he's great. And of course, then I was like, well, yeah, if you think he's great, then of course he's mine. Yeah, definitely. And she said, would you be interested in interviewing, auditioning for this new show on CBS called The Greatest American Dog? And I said, well, what's it about? She said, well, you don't have to have any training experience. It's all about the relationship with you and your dog. And I was like, well, that's good because we don't have a relationship. So if that's a requirement, you ought to just count us out right now. And she's like, no, it'd be great. So I go to this interview with the producers at CBS. And I honestly, I didn't know anything about anything, training or anything. We get in that room and he's all over the place. I probably had him on an extend leash, which most trainers hate. He's climbing all over me. And the one lady looked at me and she's like, is your dog even trained? And I was like, no, I thought that's why I was here. I have no idea what I'm doing. But it was only 2 weeks to air. They had already cast a guy from Texas with his dog. And for some reason, he had to back out last minute. So they were literally casting a guy from the Midwest that was single with a dog. And I just happened to fit the bill. And they told me, they go, well, you're going to have to get some help before you go on the show. So they hooked me up with a fantastic trainer in Los Feliz named Steve Brooks. And he really gave me a crash course in what it really means to be, a good pet parent. And he said, your dog's not going to learn all these things, but you can at least get it started. And he told me a great analogy that I'd love to share. He said, your dog gets to a certain age in life that you reach a fork in the road, right? And your dog either chooses to go down one of the forks with you, right? And you go down it together, or your dog chooses the opposite and to go down this other road by themselves. And whichever journey you take, right, is what you're going to get. And so he said, you're at that fork in the road. You can either choose to fully, own your dog and take responsibility and put in the work, or you cannot. But the choice is yours, right? And I think we all reach that point with our dogs. I think we all work with clients that feel like they're at a fork in the road, right? And how can we help them understand that if you don't make the changes, if you don't put in the work, and our job is to help them understand how to make it fun, how to enjoy it. That way it builds that relationship with their dog. And if we can do that, then we can help them down that fork in the road so they go together with their dog. And that's what happened for me.
You say this fork in the road, and you've mentioned this before, and I love the analogy. My goal here in Clubhouse has become where hopefully they don't get to that fork in the road. They've already passed that fork in the road because they've learned so much from like you, Travis, from Kim, from everybody else that's here on Clubhouse. And I love having you here and having this conversation with everyone in the room because it just shows that we all start somewhere. We all begin somewhere with our passion, our love, which brings us to our journey where you are today. So when you started filming this show and you were like, oh my God, I'm a total mess. My dog's a total mess. Probably you're like, what am I doing? How did I get here? Okay, I'm on TV. That's good. I'm an actor. That's right. I'm in Hollywood. I'm supposed to be here. Okay, let's keep this up. Let's do this. At what point did you realize that you really needed help with training? At what point did you decide that you wanted to start becoming a trainer?
Well, so I knew I needed help. The first day when we were on the show, we all arrived one at a time. There was a giant swimming pool in the backyard, and this was part of the first episode. And both the first and second episodes are actually on my website. So if anybody's curious and wants to watch the first two episodes, they're on my website. That's just my first and last name.com. But the very first day we get there, Presley, the name of my boxer, he jumps the fence. This is all on camera, by the way. Jumps the fence. The border collie had jumped the fence and was swimming in the swimming pool because obviously the border collie knew how to swim. Presley had never seen a swimming pool, right? So he sees a dog swimming out there and he just takes off and just goes right out into the middle of that swimming pool. And of course, he just sinks, right? He does not know how to swim. He can't walk on water. There's only one person that ever could walk on water. It was not him. And so he just starts doggy paddling, right? Like almost like a pencil in the water, like his head barely above the water. I was about to jump in. They were yelling at me not to jump in because I have a $800 microphone on, which I would have if I needed to. But he paddles his way over to the side. I pull him out by his collar, and he is just like, what is happening? And it was at that moment that I was like, okay, Presley was just in over his head. I think I'm in over my head. And just from a dog training standpoint, Presley, it was all I could do to even get him to put his feet back in that pool for the next 10 weeks that we were there, right? Because it was that one experience that he had in that water that was so terrible, right? That he did not want to go back in it. But over the course of the weeks, the other dog trainers that were there, I was watching them, right? I'm watching them. What are they doing? How does that work? I'd ask them little tips and tricks here and there. And because it was on TV, they weren't shy about sharing some tips and tricks with me. And so some of it worked, some of it didn't. Some of the methods some people were using weren't the way I wanted to train. But I found my way and I found what works with my dog. That's when I started seeing our relationship change, right? And that for me was when I decided, oh my gosh, I have got to help people get to this point because now I know what people are talking about when dogs change their life. And that's what happened.
You shot the show. You did the show. How did the show turn out?
Well, we weren't supposed to win. Each week we were at the bottom. We were barely passing. Each week we barely made it through until there was about 3 weeks left and we were in the top 4. And then our relationship really started to change. We really were connected. I really knew what motivated him and what made him happy. I knew whenever something wasn't going to go well, I wouldn't ask him to do it. You know what I mean? Like I just knew what was going to work. And I think that it was a lot more judging on that of how relationships can change. And it wasn't more about whose dog can do the biggest trick or catch the Frisbee at the furthest distance. It wasn't about that. It was really about how far someone can go in a short amount of time if they really put the work in. And so we ended up winning. We won $250,000, which was the most money ever won by a dog or human pair, more than Westminster, more than all of those. But of course, Uncle Sam took about 100,000 of that. So and then of course, as you know, Michael, my agent,
yeah.
And there's my manager. And then we get done with it all. And I'm like, wait, everybody thinks I have all this money. Well, they are sorely mistaken because I do not. But needless to say, we were very fortunate and humbled by the whole experience.
And so was it from there, once you were done with the show, that you decided you were going to be a trainer, or had you already started your path?
No, I had no interest in training at all. Actually, when I finished the show, people just started asking for help, right? And I was like, well, yeah, I'll help you, right? And it was more just like friends and family and here and there. And when I started noticing that when I was able to share the things that I had learned with them, making it very simple, that when they applied them, they were getting a difference, right? And they were like, oh my gosh, this is so much help. This is so much easier. I had no idea. And that's really what kind of kicked me off to helping people with their pets and navigate the world. I really try to stay in my lane. Like I really focus on basic obedience and lifestyles for families and their pets. I really don't deal a lot with aggressive dogs, 911 cases. I really don't do a lot of that. Number one reason is because a lot of owners aren't, they're not in the right environment to rehabilitate that big of an issue. And I'm not saying they're not capable. It's just the average pet owner, like a dog that has those types of issues, really needs more help than that owner can provide themselves. And that's just not the kind of facility that we have. So we just really focus on, companion pets, obedience, that type of thing with the owner pet relationship.
And I honor that so much because there are so many different types of trainers out there. And it's so important that if you're looking for a trainer yourself, find the right trainer, because there is the right trainer. It's like a therapist for yourself. If you feel like you want to go visit with a therapist, you don't just jump into the first therapist room. Sometimes the first one may not be the right one. So you definitely want to do your homework and find that right trainer. Travis, what do you think about this? I'm laughing here because of like what you were talking about. Once you're off the show, people were coming to you and you're giving them suggestions, and they were doing their breakthroughs because they were just following the baby steps that you showed them. Do you find, and I say this because I had this happen to me last night. I was at a store last night and this really cute couple walks in and they're holding a dog, and the dog is clearly overweight. And normally I wouldn't say a thing, but because of me on a Clubhouse and talking to you and talking to everybody about nutrition, about dog obesity, and there's the chart that you could Google about dog weight online and where they should be. I could definitely see that this dog was overweight, and I wasn't going to say anything. And all of a sudden, the guy saw me looking at the dog, and he goes, "Oh, her name's Ginger. She's friendly. You could say hi." And of course, that opened up the door. And I'm like going, "Well, how old's Ginger?" And he's like, "Oh, she's only two years old." And I'm like, what breed is she in? And he goes, the dachshund. And I knew she was a dachshund, but I was just trying to, break into this easy conversation. But next thing I'm like going, she seems a little big for her breed.
Oh, you told them their child was fat. Oh.
And it's horrible. It's like the same thing with me with design. When I walk into somebody's house, I know I can't say a word unless they ask me about their house, because I've walked into so many houses and I'm like, if you move the chair over 3 inches, you're going to have really good feng shui. That mirror's on the wrong wall and you need to change. And so I've learned not to do this, but now I'm finding the same thing with pets is I'm like starting to do the exact same thing. And the poor guy last night was with his girlfriend, and all of a sudden they're like, well, she is on a diet. And I'm like, well, what diet is she on? And from knowing all the pet foods. And then all of a sudden I'm like, well, that's good. I'm like, do you feed her kibble? And he's like, yes, 3 times a day. And I'm like, well, that seems like that seems like a lot. And I'm like, do you leave it down all the time? He goes, well, aren't we supposed to leave the bowl of food down all the time? And I was just like,
my gosh,
I was crushed. So long story, do you find yourself in that situation where you have to hold your tongue being a trainer?
Oh my gosh. Daily, and I think that, the thing that people don't realize is almost 60% of household cats and dogs are overweight, right? Like literally overweight. Now they're not all obese, but almost 60% are actually deemed overweight. I mean, that is a real statistic by the Pet Obesity, Group of America. And so I think what happens a lot of times is that owners, they don't spend the quality time that they would like to with their dogs, right? They don't engage with them as much as they wish they would. And so one of the ways they feel like makes up for them is to give them food, right? And give them treats and give them chews and give them bones. I mean, there's a reason that the pet industry is a multi-billion-dollar industry, right? It's because everybody buys everything for their pets. So, I see that a lot. I totally do. Obviously, we did an entire show about it on Animal Planet. But at the end of the day, until an owner, just like their own personal issues, until they admit that there's a problem, you can't help them, right? Because if you try to help them when they don't admit there's a problem or they don't want help, it actually only makes it worse, right? And they're not open to change. So I think that's the biggest thing I battle is dealing, and I shouldn't say dealing, visiting with owners that don't want to change because they don't want to come to grips with the fact that they're not providing for their pet in other ways of life, and that they are filling that void with less exercise, more sitting on the couch, more treats, more food. And that's how they're showing their dogs love, instead of spending quality time exercising, going places, doing things, enrichment activities, right? That's really what a dog really truly wants. And that's what they need.
You're so right. Speaking with John Waters, who's a vet in orthopedics, one of the things that he's shared with me, and I say in our rooms a lot, and he talks about a lot, is like every pound that a dog is overweight. So let's say a dog's supposed to be 50 pounds. That's their natural weight that they should be, hanging in there around, is around 50. Well, if they're at 55, or let's say they're even at 60 pounds, which is maybe 10 pounds overweight, that 10 pound equates to 40 pounds of extra shear weight on their joints. So for every pound that they're overweight, it's an additional 4 pounds of shear weight against their joint, which then starts to set the dog up for issues as they get older into their golden years with arthritis and all that. And that's why it's so important to keep your dog inside the weight scale and keeping them fit, so that they don't have that extra shear weight that they're carrying around. It's like going backpacking and you've never gone backpacking before. Think about throwing a backpack on your back with 30, 40 pounds and going for a hike through the Alps or through Italy. You're going to feel that at the end of the trip. I know we jumped off into weight here. I always get stuck on weight in that story last night, but I want to get back, Travis. I know we're at the top of the hour. I want to respect your time. Do you have a few more minutes, or do you have to jump?
Yep. No, I'm good.
So you were in Hollywood. You were an actor. You were at Samuel French. Your dog was at Samuel French. You got on the Big Fat Pet Makeover. You won the competition. You're now back in Oklahoma training dogs and doing this new show. What moved you back to the Midwest?
Sure. Well, we were in New York. My wife, she sang on Broadway. And so when we had connected, she's from Oklahoma as well. That's when we had moved out there about 7-8 years ago. We did not have a child at the time, so we're living in Long Island City, New York, and that's where we started our dog training company there back in 2013, 14. I was there. That's when I ended up doing my Big Fat Pet Makeover, which we shot in Austin, Texas, which, if there's any moms out there, my wife was 8-9 months pregnant in the middle of wintertime in New York while I was in Austin, Texas at that time. The worst thing I could have done was tell her how the cast and crew were having margaritas in the evenings while she was taking 2 dogs out to go pee 3 times a day in the snow, 8 months pregnant. So I don't recommend that to anyone. At least don't tell them that that's what you're doing. But once we had our son Blue, we just realized, hey, I can do the pet stuff anywhere. So many people have dogs. The majority of them need help. We can do this from anywhere. And that's when my wife kind of hung up the Broadway stuff once we had our son, and we packed up about, what was it now? Maybe 2018, and moved back here to Oklahoma. So we still have our concierge service in New York. I would just travel back and forth once every 4 weeks. I'd go there for a week, and it was actually cheaper to do that than it was to live there, believe it or not. And so we still have that. Obviously, COVID slowed things up, which we were here about a year before COVID hit. So we started the training facility here. And once everything kind of gets a little better, I'll start going back to New York, and hopefully life will get back to what we might call the new normal.
Well, thank you, Travis. Once again, thank you, everyone, for holding the room with us today and listening to Untangling the Leash. I hope you've untangled yours. I'm about to untangle mine. I'm Michael, your host, and I'm out.